Greetings, everybody. It's RPG Grandma. Uh, I'm trying to get this done in the quietest space I've got. So we left off, we were 11, and since the players decided to chase the Lone Raider, um, and it had given us options about to call Starlaw, board another monorail car and follow the Raider, or call a cab and chase the Raider. So, looking at those options, you call Starlaw. Starlaw is going to say, hey, they're probably headed to the spaceport. We'll send some people, and we'll get them if they don't get off sooner. Okay. Then it gives you more options. Wait to hear from Starlaw. Board another monorail car and follow the Raider. Call the cab and chase the Raider. So let's say they did that. They called Starlaw. And so looking at the options, if they decide to board another monorail, which was also an option up previously before calling Starlaw, the reader should move the Raider's counter along the monorail 10 spaces per turn. The Raider will be one turn ahead of the players plus one extra turn if they stop to call Starlaw. So if they called Starlaw and then get on the Raider, then they're two ahead. The Raider will get off at the monorail at the government building terminal. Once the Raider has exited, place the skimmer at the curb and check below to see what to read next. So obviously either they're on the monorail or they're in the skimmer. Let's say they call a cab to chase the Raider. The reader should move the Raider's counter along the monorail 10 spaces per turn as the players pursue in the skimmer. It will take one turn for the cab to arrive. The Raider should be moved one extra turn if the players called Starlaw. So you can get quite far behind here. The Raider will exit at the government building terminal. The reader should place the skimmer on the curb there. If the reader characters arrive one turn, you're going to go to 16. That was the same for 14. If they arrive one turn, you're going to go read 16. If the player characters arrive two or more turns, you're going to read 17. But let's say they decided to give chase in the skimmer. The Raider can be removed from the board. The reader must choose where the skimmer moves and who the Raiders will shoot at. So they're chasing the main group. Remember, the characters in a skimmer will have cover, which is -10 to the attacker's rolls, and are moving -10 when the Raiders try to shoot. The Raiders will be one turn ahead of the player characters, an extra turn if the players chase called Starlaw, so then they're two turns ahead. Be sure to move the Raiders ahead. The Raiders can drive along the main roads or take shortcuts through the underground parking areas. They can only drive one way on the one-way streets. Ask the players, do you want to chase them on foot or do you want to call a cab to chase them? All right. So, reading through this right here, you can see that it's starting to circle around because it's going to come to a conclusion pretty quick. So let's say we went to the options that gave us the 16 and 17 options. The Raider run out of the monorail terminal ahead of you and leap into the waiting skimmer. The other Raiders are in the skimmer waiting for him. The players can shoot at the Raiders in the skimmer. Remember, the characters in the skimmer have cover, -10. The reader should pick one of the Raiders to be the driver. If he's knocked unconscious, the skimmer will stop and the Raiders will surrender. The Raiders will try to drive off the board to the spaceport. Check below to see what to read next, depending on the results of the combat. And that's when we get Raiders Escape and Starlaw was not called option. Raiders Escape and Starlaw was called option. Or if the raiders were captured. But let's say they got behind on those previous choices. What happens under the 17 condition? You are too late. You see the raider and the cab with the cube dash out of the monorail terminal and leap into the waiting skimmer and his friends. They spin onto the Spaceport Expressway. You try to chase them, but their skimmer soon disappears into traffic. If the players called Starlaw, read 20. If the players have not called Starlaw, read 21. So we're at this point, we're starting to collapse into the same endings. But remembering 12, we had that 18 option. You want to give chase on foot. So let's see what that was about. If the players run after the skimmer, so this is the main group, not the raider who's off on the monorail, the reader should make sure that the rules on crossing roads, getting onto walkways, and running through buildings are followed. The reader should pick one of the raiders to be the driver of the skimmer. If the driver is knocked unconscious, the skimmer will stop and the raiders will surrender. The raiders will try to drive to the government building monorail terminal. Check below to see what to read next depending on the result of combat. If the player characters are one turn behind the raiders, read 16, which we already did. If the player characters are 2 or more behind, read 17. If the skimmer was stopped and the raiders were captured, read 22. So we're getting down to the resolutions. 19, that was an option that you're going to chase the skimmer. That's where you call the cab. So they call the cab. It'll take 1 turn to arrive. Move the raiders 1 extra move. The reader should make sure that the rules for moving through intersections, around curves, on ramps, and through underground parking areas are followed. The reader and the players should each pick a character to drive their skimmer. Drivers cannot shoot. If the driver is knocked unconscious, the skimmer will stop. If the raider skimmer stops, they will surrender. The raiders will try to drive to the government building monorail terminal because they got to pick up their buddy. Check below to see what to read next. Now, we're going back to those options 16 and 17, the one where, and if they stop the raiders, the skimmer and all that, 22, where they surrender. So what are these other options that we're looking at? Well, 16 and 17 we've already covered. 20. We got 20, 22. So let's see. What are those options in 21? So 22, let's say they surrendered. Pan Galactic is very pleased you have caught the raiders and that the raids have finally been stopped. They are especially happy, and you recovered the metallic cube because it contained data on all the PGC security systems. If it had fallen into the wrong hands, who knows what could have happened. When you try to question the raiders, each smiles slyly, touches a button on his collars, and stares dumbly at you. When you examine them, you discover they have been injected with a drug that turned them into idiots. They won't be answering any questions now. While you are reviewing the case with your superiors, there is a call from Starlaw. They searched the raider skimmers and found something that looks like some kind of recorded message. They play it for you. Read it. And we'll go over the other things and that ending message at the end, but as you can see, instead of them being killed, they made it a little more kid-friendly. They just are idiots now, which is still a nice option. You don't always have to kill the mooks, right? So we'll go over endings 21, 22, what was found, rewards, and how they tell you to reuse the adventure as well. So that's all coming.